The crypto market is moving. And if you missed the last bull cycle, the window you have right now may be the most important opportunity of the entire year. Dogecoin just surged 10% in a single trading session, sending a clear signal across the entire altcoin landscape. Risk appetite is back, retail money is flowing, and early-stage projects are beginning to attract serious capital. But here is what the mainstream financial press is not covering. While traders are chasing established coins on centralized exchanges, a quiet but significant migration of smart money is happening in the presale and ICO space. And one project in particular, a meme-adjacent token called Based Eggman, has just crossed $315,000 in early funding. That number alone would be unremarkable. What makes it extraordinary is the speed, the community structure behind it, and the broader macro environment in which it is happening. We are at an inflection point where the gap between early entry and public listing represents, for certain projects, some of the most asymmetric upside this market has produced in years. The question is not whether to pay attention to presales in Q2 2026. The question is which ones deserve your serious consideration and which ones are traps. We have done the research. The answers are in this report. I'm Pamela, and you're watching XRP News. Let us set the stage properly, because context matters enormously when evaluating early-stage crypto investments. And right now, the context is unusually favorable for presale activity. The second quarter of 2026 is unfolding against a backdrop that serious market participants have not seen in a very long time. Bitcoin has consolidated above key structural levels after its most recent halving cycle matured through 2025. Ethereum's ecosystem has continued to absorb institutional interest following the ETF approvals and regulatory clarifications that reshaped the landscape over the past 18 months. And perhaps most importantly, retail sentiment, the fuel that drives the highest percentage gains in the altcoin and meme coin segments, is decisively returning. You can measure retail sentiment in several ways. Search volume data, social media engagement metrics, exchange inflow from non-institutional wallets, and the velocity of fundraising in the presale space all serve as reliable indicators. Right now, every single one of those indicators is pointing in the same direction. We are in the early stages of a retail-driven altcoin cycle, and historically, the most extraordinary returns during these periods do not come from buying coins that are already listed and trading at or near their highs. They come from identifying projects before the crowd arrives. During the presale window, when valuations are lowest, community energy is most genuine, and the price discovery process has not yet been influenced by exchange listings, market makers, or media-driven speculation. That is the environment in which we are operating today, and that is why a report on the best presales and ICOs of Q2 2026 is not a speculative exercise. It is a practical, grounded examination of where the early signals are strongest right now. We will cover several projects in depth today. We will look at their mechanics, their communities, their tokenomics, and the specific reasons they are attracting attention in this particular market cycle. Based Eggman will receive significant focus because its recent funding milestone coincides with a very specific set of conditions that experienced presale investors recognize as meaningful. But we will also zoom out and examine the broader category. What separates a presale worth entering from one that carries more downside than opportunity, and how the Dogecoin surge of 10% is connected to the kind of sentiment environment that tends to lift early-stage meme and utility tokens along with it. This is going to be a detailed, thorough report. We are not going to rush through it, because the decisions involved deserve careful analysis. Stay with us through the entirety of this segment. There are specifics toward the end of this report that significantly reframe how the early projects should be evaluated relative to one another. Let us begin with the macro signal that is driving much of today's story: Dogecoin's 10% move. For investors who track crypto markets closely, a double-digit percentage gain in Dogecoin on a single day is significant for reasons that extend well beyond Dogecoin itself. Dogecoin, by now a well-established fixture of the cryptocurrency landscape, functions in market analysis as a kind of retail sentiment thermometer. Its price action is not primarily driven by technology upgrades, protocol developments, or institutional thesis building. It is driven by community energy, social media momentum, and the general willingness of retail participants to take on speculative risk. When Dogecoin moves 10% upward, It is telling you something very specific about the current state of the market. It is telling you that retail capital is active, that risk tolerance has expanded, and that the conditions exist for meme-adjacent and community-driven assets to outperform. This is not a recent theory. It is one of the more consistently observable patterns across multiple crypto market cycles going back to 2017. The mechanics are straightforward. During risk-off periods, even projects with genuine communities and strong fundamentals struggle to attract new capital because participants are cautious. During risk-on periods, which a 10% Dogecoin surge clearly signals, the same projects can experience explosive growth in both community engagement and funding velocity. Capital does not just rotate within the established coin market during these periods. It flows down the risk curve into earlier stage opportunities where the potential returns are higher precisely because the assets are less liquid and less well known. Pre-sales are the furthest point down that risk curve. They are the segment where the ceiling is theoretically highest because you are getting in before any public price discovery. The Dogecoin move is therefore not just a headline about one coin doing well. It is a green light signal for the entire pre-sale ecosystem to accelerate. And the $315,000 milestone that Based Eggman just hit is, in part, a direct expression of that dynamic. Let us now move into a detailed examination of the pre-sale landscape itself before we drill into the individual projects. The pre-sale and ICO market has undergone substantial evolution since its chaotic emergence in 2017 and 2018. The original ICO boom was characterized by extreme enthusiasm, minimal due diligence, and a regulatory environment that was entirely unprepared for the volume and variety of projects launching. The result was predictable. A large percentage of projects raised significant capital, delivered nothing, and left investors with losses. That history created a useful filter. The investors who remained in the pre-sale space after that period developed considerably more sophisticated evaluation frameworks. The regulatory environment, while still varying significantly by jurisdiction, has matured enough to create clearer expectations around disclosure and project structure. And critically, the community infrastructure around pre-sale evaluation, the on-chain analytics tools, the tokenomics auditing practices, the community-driven due diligence that happens on platforms like X, Telegram, and Discord is now robust enough to identify red flags that would have been invisible to the average investor in 2018. This does not mean pre-sales are safe. They are not. They remain among the highest risk investment categories in an already volatile asset class. A significant percentage of pre-sale projects, even in the current more mature environment, will fail to deliver meaningful returns. Some will fail entirely. Investors should approach this space with capital they are genuinely prepared to lose, a diversified position structure rather than concentrated bets, and a clear exit framework established before entering. With those disclaimers stated plainly and on the record, let us talk about what makes a pre-sale worth examining in the first place. The first criterion is community authenticity. This is perhaps the most important and also the most difficult to measure quantitatively. A genuine community is one that formed organically around a shared idea, narrative, or identity, rather than one manufactured through paid promotion, bot activity, or airdrop farming. You can detect the difference through engagement quality. Are conversations substantive? Are questions being asked and answered with real information? Are community members recruiting others based on genuine enthusiasm? Fake communities have high follower counts and low engagement depth. Real communities often look smaller on the surface but demonstrate extraordinary cohesion and conversion rates. The second criterion is tokenomics transparency. A project with clearly defined token allocation, vesting schedules, and an honest explanation of where pre-sale proceeds are directed is demonstrably lower risk than one with opaque or shifting token structures. The presence of team token lockups, which prevent early insiders from dumping immediately after listing, is a particularly important signal. Projects that lock team tokens for 6 to 12 months post-launch are making a costly commitment that aligns their incentives with retail investors. Projects without these lockups are creating a structural incentive for exit at the expense of later buyers. The third criterion is narrative fit with the current market cycle. Different cycles favor different categories. In Q2 2026, the narratives gaining the most traction include artificial intelligence integration. base layer gaming ecosystems, politically inflected meme coins, and what the community has been calling legacy meme revivals. Projects that tap into established internet culture with a fresh structural proposition. A presale that fits cleanly into one of these active narratives will enjoy natural tailwinds in distribution and media attention that a project in a dormant narrative category simply will not receive. The fourth criterion is listing credibility. Where is the project planning to list? An exchange listing on a Tier 1 or Tier 2 platform within a defined and credible timeline provides a concrete exit pathway for presale investors. Projects that are vague about their listing plans or that describe listing timelines in language designed to avoid commitment create significant liquidity risk. You may own tokens that are technically valuable but practically illiquid for longer than your investment thesis assumed. With these four criteria as our framework, let us now examine the specific projects generating the most attention in Q2 2026, beginning with Based Eggman. Based Eggman occupies a fascinating and somewhat unusual position in the current presale landscape. On the surface, it reads as a meme coin. The name, the visual identity, and the community culture are all clearly rooted in internet humor and the kind of irreverent energy that characterized the early Dogecoin and Shiba Inu communities. But beneath that surface layer, there are structural decisions in place that suggest the team behind this project is aware of the failures of previous meme coin cycles and has deliberately built in mechanisms designed to extend the project's life beyond the typical pump-and-dump life cycle. The $315,000 presale milestone is notable for several reasons. First, it was reached without the kind of concentrated influencer marketing campaign that tends to drive artificial spikes in meme coin presale metrics. The growth appears to have been driven predominantly by organic community spread, which is, as we discussed, the most reliable early indicator of genuine retail interest. Projects that reach six-figure presale funding without a major paid marketing push tend to have communities with higher conviction, lower churn, and more durable support through the volatility that inevitably follows listing. Second, the timing of the milestone is significant. Based Eggman crossed $315,000 during the same market window in which Dogecoin surged 10%. This is not coincidence. It is correlation. But the type of correlation matters. Projects that see funding acceleration during meme coin surges are capturing genuine momentum spillover from the broader retail sentiment wave. This is a feature, not a concern, provided the project has the structural integrity to sustain interest once the initial excitement normalizes. Let us examine the tokenomics of Based Eggman as they have been publicly disclosed. The project has structured its presale allocation in tiers, with early participants receiving the lowest entry price and subsequent tranches priced at a premium. This tiered structure is a positive signal for two reasons. First, it rewards early commitment, which creates genuine incentive for community members to recruit others and maintain promotional energy throughout the presale period rather than front-loading all engagement in the first days and then going silent. Second, it creates a built-in price appreciation narrative. Buyers in early tranches can point to subsequent tranche pricing as evidence of growing demand, which itself functions as a marketing mechanism. The team token allocation and vesting schedule for Based Eggman follows what has become best practice in the community-driven token space. Team tokens represent a minority of total supply, with a lockup period that extends beyond the initial listing phase. This structure ensures that the individuals who built the project are financially incentivized to continue building after launch rather than extracting value at the first available opportunity. The narrative fit for Based Eggman in the current cycle is strong. The politically adjacent, internet culture-rooted meme coin category has seen explosive performance in recent periods, with projects drawing on recognizable cultural references generating outsized returns relative to more abstract or purely utility-focused tokens. Based Eggman's identity sits comfortably in this lane, familiar enough to immediately resonate with a broad, internet-native audience, distinct enough to feel like a fresh entry point rather than a derivative copy of something that already had its moment. The listing roadmap, as disclosed by the project, targets mid-Q3 2026, with decentralized exchange listing preceding a centralized exchange application process. The DEX listing provides immediate liquidity and price discovery for presale participants, while the team pursues the more demanding compliance process required for top-tier CEX listings. This is a realistic and well-structured plan, more credible than projects promising immediate Tier 1 exchange listings that they have no reasonable path to achieving in the disclosed timeframe. The key risk factors for Based Eggman are consistent with those of the category broadly. Meme coins are, by nature, highly sentiment dependent. The community energy that drives them to significant valuations can dissipate quickly if the narrative loses cultural relevance or if a competing meme coin emerges with stronger momentum. The project's ability to execute on its listing timeline and to maintain community engagement through the inevitable lull that follows the excitement of presale completion will be the decisive factors in determining whether it delivers meaningful returns for its earliest backers. We will now move to broader category analysis, examining the other presale and early-stage projects that are drawing attention in Q2 2026, alongside Based Eggman, and framing them within the same four-criterion evaluation structure. The artificial intelligence integration category deserves extended discussion because it is simultaneously the most overpromised and most genuinely productive space in the current presale market. There are dozens of projects claiming to combine blockchain infrastructure with artificial intelligence capabilities, and a significant percentage of them are either misusing the AI label as a marketing device or describing capabilities so far in advance of their actual development stage as to be misleading. However, within that crowded field, there are a smaller number of projects where the AI integration is substantive, where the technical team has demonstrable credentials in the relevant fields, and where the use case addresses a real problem that existing centralized AI platforms handle poorly. Specifically, the area of decentralized AI inference, using blockchain-based incentive structures to distribute the computational work of running AI models, is attracting serious development talent and genuine institutional interest. Projects in this space that are currently in presale represent a different risk profile than pure meme coins, less dependent on short-term sentiment, more dependent on technical execution, with a longer horizon to meaningful returns. Evaluating these projects requires more technical due diligence than evaluating a meme coin. Investors should be examining whether the team has published substantive technical documentation, whether that documentation has received any form of independent review or audit, and whether the claimed AI capabilities are consistent with what can actually be built at the current state of the technology. Projects that describe their AI integration in purely marketing language, without technical specificity, should be treated with significant skepticism, regardless of how compelling the broader narrative sounds. The base layer gaming ecosystem category is similarly promising, but similarly crowded. The vision of blockchain-native gaming has been articulated for years, and the execution has consistently lagged the ambition. The projects that are generating genuine interest in Q2 2026 are those that have moved past the vision statement phase and are showing working prototypes, active user bases in beta environments, or credible partnerships with existing gaming communities. A presale for a gaming ecosystem token without any playable product and without a committed community of actual gamers is a significantly weaker proposition than one where the gaming experience exists in some meaningful form before the presale concludes. The legacy meme revival category, which includes projects drawing on established internet culture with fresh structural propositions, is perhaps the most intuitive for general audiences to evaluate, because the primary criterion is cultural resonance. Does the meme being activated feel genuinely alive and relevant to the current internet moment, or does it feel like someone excavating something that already had its run? The best projects in this category find reference points that span multiple generations of internet culture, familiar enough to immediately resonate, with sufficient ambiguity to allow new layers of meaning to develop around the community as it grows. Let us spend some time on the mechanics of actually participating in a presale, because the practical execution is something that many investors, including experienced crypto market participants, sometimes approach too casually, and the errors that result can be significant. The most common practical error is failure to verify the official presale contract address before sending funds. The meme coin and early-stage token space attracts an unusually high concentration of scam activity precisely because the enthusiasm and FOMO dynamics that drive genuine presales also create conditions that fraudulent actors exploit effectively. There is a consistent pattern across successful meme coin launches, where, shortly after a legitimate presale gains visibility, fake versions of the project appear, with slightly modified names, identical visual branding, and smart contract addresses that either steal funds directly or deploy tokens with no value. Verifying contract addresses through multiple official sources, the project's official website, their verified social media accounts, and independent community verification channels before initiating any transaction is not optional due diligence. It is the minimum baseline. The second practical consideration is gas optimization and timing. Presale participation on Ethereum-adjacent chains can involve meaningfully variable transaction costs, depending on network congestion at the time of participation. Investors who understand how to time their transactions during lower congestion windows can reduce their effective cost basis in ways that compound favorably over time. This is a small optimization in isolation, but becomes material when applied consistently across multiple presale positions. The third consideration is wallet security hygiene. Presale participation requires connecting wallets to smart contracts, which creates exposure pathways that are not present when simply holding assets in cold storage. Using a dedicated wallet specifically for presale participation, separate from your primary holdings, is a basic but highly effective risk management practice. The dedicated wallet should contain only the funds you are actively deploying in presales, not your broader crypto holdings. The fourth consideration is position sizing relative to your overall portfolio. Given the risk profile of presale investments, high potential upside, meaningful probability of partial or total loss, sizing each individual position conservatively while maintaining a diversified set of positions is the structure that serious investors in this space use consistently. The goal is to ensure that no single presale position, even one that goes to zero, creates a materially damaging outcome for your overall financial position. Let us return now to the broader market context and examine the connection between the current altcoin cycle dynamics and the specific opportunities in the presale space more carefully. The 10% Dogecoin surge we referenced at the opening of today's report is part of a broader pattern that, when examined with sufficient historical context, tells a specific story about where we are in the current cycle. Dogecoin's strongest percentage moves have historically clustered in the middle phases of altcoin bull cycles, after the initial Bitcoin dominance phase, when capital begins rotating aggressively into lower cap assets, but before the cycle reaches its speculative peak and risk appetite begins to contract. If that pattern is repeating, and the current data suggests it is, then Q2 2026 represents a window of opportunity in the early to middle portion of that rotation. We are past the point where only Bitcoin and Ethereum were capturing gains, and not yet at the point where the most speculative assets are pricing in the peak of the cycle. This is, historically, the period when presale investors who entered in the preceding months begin to see their positions move into significant profit as listed tokens benefit from the broadening of risk appetite. It is also the period when the volume of new presale launches increases substantially, because project teams and their advisors are experienced enough to know that the presale window that opens during this phase of the cycle is the most favorable fundraising environment of the year. This creates a selection problem for investors. There are more projects to evaluate, more marketing noise, more social media promotion, and more competition for attention. The investors who navigate this environment most successfully are those with a clear and consistently applied evaluation framework, which is exactly what we have been building throughout this report. The projects that are worth your attention in Q2 2026 are not necessarily the ones with the loudest marketing presence. They are the ones with the most authentic communities, the most transparent tokenomics, the strongest narrative fit with the current cycle, and the most credible listing roadmaps. Based Eggman's $315,000 milestone is worth discussing not because the dollar amount is enormous in absolute terms, it is not, but because of what it represents qualitatively, organic, community-driven fundraising during a favorable sentiment window, with the structural characteristics of a project that has learned from previous meme coin cycle failures. We have covered a significant amount of ground in this report, and we want to spend the final section synthesizing the key themes and providing a clear framework for how to think about the decisions involved. The presale and ICO space in Q2 2026 is characterized by genuinely favorable macro conditions. The retail sentiment that Dogecoin's 10% surge signals is real and consequential. The projects generating authentic early traction, as opposed to manufactured visibility, are drawing on community dynamics that have become more sophisticated and more durable than those of previous cycles. Within this environment, Based Eggman's $315,000 presale milestone stands as a concrete data point worth understanding. It is a signal that meme-adjacent community tokens with thoughtful structural design can attract meaningful capital during risk-on periods, even without the scale of marketing investment that major exchange-listed projects deploy. The implications for early-stage investors are significant. The gap between pre-sale entry price and potential listing price for projects in this category during cycles like this one has historically been one of the most asymmetric opportunities in the entire investment landscape. As always, nothing in today's coverage constitutes financial or investment advice. The information presented is for educational and informational purposes. All investment decisions, particularly in the high-risk category of crypto presales, should be made based on your own independent research and with the guidance of qualified financial professionals where appropriate. This has been XRP News. I'm Pamela. Thank you for watching.